Hi guys, it's Matt here from Max on UK, and in this tutorial we're going to be looking at how to create hydraulics for a robotic arm. Now I'm largely going to be looking at the principle of how to get the hydraulics to work, so I'm not going to make a fully fledged and exciting looking robotic arm. In fact, I'm going to make an extremely basic one, but hopefully the principle of it will allow you to get everything that you need to create your own. Okay, so let's get cracking then. So I'm going to create myself a very basic robotic arm to start with, which is largely going to consist of one sort of robotic arm joint, which I shall copy and paste, and I shall create my second robotic arm joint. And that's kind of pretty much it, really. You know, I'm not going to need an awful lot more. I'm just going to position these around to get what I want, and then I'm going to create a joint which is going to be there, so I'm just going to adjust that, maybe shrink it a bit and lower its height. So that's going to be my sort of middle pivot, and then I'm going to create another one of those to create the origin pivot. I'm just going to make sure that it's, you know, roughly where it needs to be. There we go, and maybe I'll create something, you know, that works as a pincer then, or something that maybe just another cylinder, just so that we know which way is forward. So let's have a look there. Okay, and then maybe I might create a ball joint. Okay, cool. So there we go. That is my incredibly wonderful robotic arm. Yes. So it gets me what I need to do. So what I'm going to do to start with is just hide the bits that it doesn't need to, I don't need to be working with at the moment. And that's the cylinders. No, that one I do need. Oops. So those ones. There we go. Now these I am going to make editable, so that I can bind them, and then I'm going to create my joints. So it doesn't matter whether I have or have not got a null at this point. So I'm just going to do that, that, and that. And so that's the joint tool and control click to give me my set of joints. Okay, and then I'm going to select those three, and I'm going to right click, connect and delete, so that I have one. And then I'm going to select these joints by command clicking, command clicking those joints and command clicking the cube, and then I go to characters, commands and bind. And now if I do that, they are all jointed nicely, okay, which is fine, that's where I want. Now the idea of the sphere and the cylinders is that I can add these into the joints without needing to have them bound, but they will always stay where they need to be. So the sphere is before that joint, that cylinder is before that joint, and that cylinder is first actually, so actually that needs to be there, doesn't it? Okay, I might need to adjust that. And now let's create an IK chain. So I want number 1, and then I want number 2 and number 3, and then go to characters, commands, hold down command and create IK chain. And that creates the 2 tags and the 2 goals. So now if I move, there we go, perfecto. One little, you know, very cheesy looking sort of duck-billed platypus type electro arm. There we go. But that was really fast, wasn't it? So the command click to the bind gives us this. We might want to put these in some form of controller, which could be actually could be the cylinder, I guess, if we really wanted it to be. Or I could just create myself another one. So let's just get that back to 0. And then I'm going to create a circular spline, which I shall just edit. Nope, wrong one. There we go. I'll put that right at the end. Shrink it down because I don't need it to be that big. I shall call that controller, shockingly enough, and then I shall make those two a child of it and minimize that. And that way I've got something that I can easily click on now. Cool. Okay, so let's get our controller, our arm, into a decent position for us to be able to do our hydraulics. So hydraulics are relatively simple, and we need our cylinders to put them together. So let's just put that back down to there. Might just zero that out. Okay, there we go. So let's get cylinder number 1 then, and let's just do that. Make sure it's in the right alignment, and I'm going to shrink it. Don't want it to be too large at all. So where we want our hydraulics to sort of finish. Okay, and then there are a couple of ways of doing this, to be perfectly honest. I've always done it with cylinders, but there is another way which is really quite cool. So we've got that. I'm just going to actually straighten that out completely as well. There we go, so that we know everything is stopped. Obviously you're going to design what this goes into far better than I have, which I have just put a cylinder in there, but the principle will still be the same. I am going to group that, so Alt G, which gives me a null, and then I'm just going to hold down 7 and move that down to there. This is going to give me what I will point at, as it were. So this is going to form the basis of our target, and we know that it's the x-axis. And then I am going to create a circle. So create a circular spline, okay, and then I shall adjust its size and shape, because this is going to form the end of our hydraulic system. Okay, so just going to make sure that it marries up to, it doesn't matter if it's just a little bit behind, but you can see the size as to whether or not it's within that, which it is. That's fine, that's absolutely okay. And that's going to go into a LoftNURBS. Okay, boom. Then I'm going to create another circle, and that circle is going to wend its way over there. So it's part of that sphere, and that will create the other end. This LoftNURBS, okay, is going to become a child of the hydraulics. So this is always going to be, pointing in that direction. I'm just going to name that HD02, just so that we know that that is the hydraulics there. Our HD hydraulics 1 needs to become a child of something, and it's best to make it, I think, a child of that cylinder. So it should become a child of that cylinder. Boom. Okay, that's not going to be a problem. And then we are going to need to target it to something. So I'm going to target it to that sphere, and I'm going to use a constraint tag, and I'm going to use aim, because it means that we can use the axis here. So I'm going to point it at that sphere. You can see that that goes boom, and that it points in that direction. That's because of the Z axis that it is configured to point at, whereas I want it to use the plus X axis. There we go, and that is now pointing in that direction. So wherever that controller now points, it points in that direction. And you can see that we've sort of got that working, but if it goes too far, then it disappears. Now this is where the clever bit comes in, and the clever bit is using the other end of the LoftNURBS here, which we're also going to add a constraint tag to. So we go to tags, go to character tags, go to constraint, and this time we want to tag the position, scale and rotation of the sphere again. So it should always clamp itself to it. Actually, I might get rid of the rotation and the scale. Okay, just so that it is not warping like it did then. And now, if I move my controller, you can see that that reflects. If I go all the way or all the way out, it will continue to point in that direction. And because the other end of the LoftNURBS is attached there, this will always be the correct length and we will never run out. Obviously, you are going to want to make sure that yours controls itself a bit better. Mine is just pointing into a sphere. You're going to design yourself something very nice and very sort of robotic-like that will allow you to, point that in the correct direction at all points so that it never sort of laps over. But if you notice, it doesn't matter what angle this goes at or how crazy it goes, it will always point there, which is a really nice little thing to be working on. Okay guys, I hope that was a useful tutorial for you in creating the hydraulics for Cinema 4D, and I shall catch you next time.